what do you get for that fee? So are you reviewing insurance for me? Are you talking about identity theft? Are you taking a look at my estate plans? Those are the types of things that are out there that we do that I think is important to know as part of that single fee that we charge for our clients.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Podcast. And we call it that because this is a show about real finance for real people. We often get asked, what kind of clients do you work with at Stonehouse? And the term that I like to use is blue collar wealth. That means most of our clients have about $500,000 to several millions of dollars saved up for their retirement, but they don't necessarily care about buying a giant yacht and sailing it to the south of France or somewhere. Most of our clients instead are asking us about how much juice they can squeeze out of their retirement so they can live a long, happy, healthy life. My name is Bob Brown, and I'm a certified financial planner here and founding partner at Stonehouse Retirement Income Planners. I've had the privilege of helping many families plan and live their lives for over 20 years, and I'm a part of a growing team here at Stonehouse. We've seen our clients go through a ton of different things in their lives. And now, thanks to the beauty of the podcast, we can share some of those stories and maybe even some shortcuts to hopefully get you on track and stay on track with your own finances. In this episode, we're going to talk about what does it really cost to hire a retirement income planner. You may very well be feeling overwhelmed at the idea of choosing a professional to help you with your finances, especially with assets you've worked a lifetime to build. When you Google what kind of professional you should seek and how, should they get paid, it's almost too much to take in. And maybe the terminology used in those definitions is Greek to you. It can all be incredibly frustrating and intimidating, which is why so many people often simply ask their friends and their colleagues who they use in hopes to fast track to the right person. You're not alone in this. Many people just like you feel this way. Well, by the end of this podcast, I hope that we're able to get you to a better place where you can understand the types of expenses you might be paying, who you might be paying them to, and why you may or may not need to pay them at all. And I hope to provide you a great process so you can start shopping for that right match. To help me discuss the real cost of hiring an advisor, I've brought in John Burke, one of my partners here at Stonehouse. John's also an advisor, and he has experience educating people just like you who are a bit intimidated by this whole search. All right, John, let's jump into a topic that people typically when somebody walks in our office, this is a very common question right off the bat that they want to know, like, what are your fees? What is it going to cost me? And I feel like in our industry, no matter what your answer is, that I think the client feels it might be elusive at times or it's vague. And I think in fairness to both parties, it's a tough question to answer just a blanket statement. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I've had somebody say, hey, this advisor is charging me this and you're charging me more.
Yep.
And I would look at that sometimes and say, you're right, the other person is overpriced. And that confuses them. And I say, well, what they're telling you they're doing is they're just picking a couple of mutual funds and setting it there. We do way more than that here.
Yeah.
And that's why our price is a little bit higher. But, I think it's very fairly priced when you look at other firms that are doing all the things we're doing, right? So it's hard to just throw out a number. So how do you go about answering that one, like right off the bat when someone says that to you?
Yeah. So, the fee question, when you Google how do you pick a financial advisor is usually one of the top questions to interview. So you definitely get it quite a bit as an advisor. So the way I usually would go about that is I go right at it. And so meaning we charge based on the amount of assets that we manage as a certain percentage, which is a pretty common formula for investment advisors. So I'll try to get an idea of what their asset levels would look like, and then I'll go through a fee calculation and I'll tell them, hey, here's the fee that's charged based on the assets that we're managing.
And you're saying that because the more assets, typically the lower the fee, the percentage.
Fee. That's correct. Gotcha. Yep, exactly. So that fee percentage goes down as the assets go up. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. And so there's some, for an asset size of a certain amount, there's base work that needs to be done regardless of whether that's a $10,000 account or a $2.5 million account. And then as that account size goes up, there's some variable costs that go into that start to come down, which is why we pass on those cost savings to those customers. So I'll generally go about it and tell them, hey, here's what that that fee is. But then I'll follow it up with, hey, as you're doing this benchmarking, because you know that they're asking that question in terms of interviews likely with other advisors, I try to go through the other costs that are associated with investment advising. So that way they can do a real apples to apples comparison. Things like, depending on the products that they might be in, there might be a front end sales charge. There might be transaction fees. There might be a back end sales charge if they would leave that product after a certain period of time. Especially in the annuity business is where you run into a lot of times those back end sales charges. And so they're locked into an investment maybe for, 5 years and even as long as 10 years in some cases. Whereas the investments that we're using for folks, we can move in and out of them at any point in time without any charges to move in or charges to move out of them. And so that's usually the conversation I'll get into with clients in terms of what that looks like.
Yeah. What about separate account management, right? Like a lot of times people say, well, my person's charging me this, but then they're taking the portfolio and outsourcing the management to an outside firm, which is also tacking on the fee, but they should, but they don't often disclose that. So, and that's where it's hard for the client, right? To understand, am I comparing apples to apples?
Right. It's hard to even ask the right questions. And so the other fee that's associated is what's called the underlying expenses of the investments that advisor, whether it's us or another investment advisor is using, they can be as low as 0.01%, depending on if it was a huge index mutual fund or ETF, and they can be as high as 1.5% or 2%, depending on if it was a mutual fund that's using some leverage or some alternative style investments. And so there's a broad range of things that can happen. And so, you have to sort of ask the question of what is the investment advisor fee? Is there any sub-account charges? Is there any transactions charges? What's the average expense of the investments that you're using? And so you have to take all of those and sort of add them together to be able to get an idea around, is Stonehouse more or less expensive than what that other investment advisor they're interviewing is?
Yeah, all those different fees. So you're talking Greek now. You're talking all the different letters of the alphabet when you say those different types of fees. But I think for me, if I'm in the client's perspective, I think what I want to know is, are you transparent? Right. Like if I ask the question, are you evasive and just kind of blow past the question? Like I want somebody, I believe somebody should be paid. Of course, I'm on the other side of it as well. But like, I don't care who I'm using and what I'm using them for in my life. If they're helping my life be easier and doing something that I can't do, I don't have time or I don't have the skill set, I expect that I would have to pay for that. But if you're just tell me what the fee is instead of just being elusive. So I like the way you say that because I think we do that and we're used to doing that. I think in our industry, you have to be used to defending and justifying any fees that you do charge. And so when you lay it out, like here's the fees that we charge directly, here's the things, these other smaller things that you might be subject to, and say, so your costs are somewhere in this range. Yep. I mean, that makes sense. Is there anything else that people need to know about? There's a lot there, but
right. I would say the other thing is, I've had folks walk into the office and I ask them, well, what are you paying now if they're with another firm? And most of the time they don't know. And quite honestly, if you asked our clients what they pay, they may not know either. But knowing where to find that, and so it's published usually right on that statement and where to find that, I think that's important. I've also had people tell me that the investment advisor is not charging them anything, and that's not correct. It's usually buried in those other subcategories and things like that. The only thing that I would say that's important and from a fee perspective is there's that base fee, but really what are you getting for that fee? And so, you might just be paying for asset management and that's all the investment advisor is providing. In that case, you can use some very low cost robo-advisors, even if that's what you're looking for. But with a firm like Stonehouse, you're going to get a suite of other available services that, that client can use. And so I think the next question is, what's that fee? But what do you get for that fee?
Yes.
So are you reviewing insurance for me? Are you talking about identity theft? Are you taking a look at my estate plans? Those are the types of things that are out there that we do that I think is important to know as part of that single fee that we charge for our clients.
Yeah, you have me in a trance because all those things are all the things we do, and I believe that that's all justified. And there are so many people out there that just do one of those things, right? And for that price, you should pay this, and it really depends on what the client wants, because we do have do-it-yourselfers out there, right?
Sure.
And they're probably not a great fit for a firm like ours. They could go to the robo, right? But they better be darn sure they're taking care of all those other things that are most certainly happening in their life today or will be in the future.
Right.
And so as you add all that stuff together, what about fiduciary? Do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So the other that's a popular question that's on the interview checklist too. And so a fiduciary means we must do what's in the best interest of our client, not just put them in suitable investments, but the ones that are the best for them. And so we take that into consideration in terms of picking the lowest cost of the underlying expenses that we possibly can for clients. And so trying to hit that for them in terms of the investments that we'll suggest for them. But not every advisor out there falls under that fiduciary duty, but it's definitely becoming something more and more popular because the industry is cutting back on the bad actors and those that are trying to charge a higher fee just to put their clients in something that's okay and not the best.
Yeah. And I think I appreciate the industry cracking down on that.
Sure.
Because it makes guys like us look better.
Right. It's in our interest to do the right thing.
Absolutely. All right. So another topic that we should jump on is let's talk about, I guess I would use the term dilution. So like when you look at a particular advisor, if he or she has a large number of clients, they only have a fixed amount of time in a given work week to work with those clients.
Right.
So what's your thought on how that fee is in relationship to that, a smaller client base justifying for a higher fee because you're giving more attention?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say as folks are doing in that interview checklist, after the fee question is how many clients do you work with? And so, to me, that's important because, if there's an investment advisor working with hundreds and hundreds of clients, my natural thought process, if I'm on the other side of the table, is well, where do I fall in priority order?
Sure.
And so one of the objectives that we do at Stonehouse is to make sure that we have enough advisors for the amount of clients that we're working with so we can give that personalized attention. And so if I was working with 700 clients, and the markets are tough or whatever that happens to be, the chances of me following up and working with that client, if they have a question, maybe I don't have time to get back to them immediately, or maybe that's not a priority for me. That's something that we try to keep an eye on here at Stonehouse, is making sure that advisor to client ratio stays in a place that they can provide that personalized service.
Yep. And one last thing I would add to that is one thing that we're very proud of here, which is the door is always open to come into Stonehouse as well as to leave at any time. Right. So whatever clients are paying us, they feel justified in that. And if they ever need to make a change in their life, they want to take over themselves, or they have something go different in their lives, and they want to say, hey, I'm moving on, there's no back-end charges or hidden fees or anything like that to do. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I always tell my clients, you'll know whether you're getting what you pay for, in the sense of over time, if you're getting the returns that we've talked about, if you're getting the level of service we've talked about, and ultimately if they don't, as you said, there's nothing holding them there. They're able to unpack that and move those assets to wherever they want to without having to pay a fee or hold things that are suboptimal for them. We're not set up that way here at Stonehouse. But I found over time, if you're working hard for those clients and follow up with them, that usually things work out pretty well. And that's been our history here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate taking the time. So in interest of this conversation, I will get you off camera and get back to work earning your keep.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you have any questions about your fees, where to start, how to choose a planner, please go ahead and do your internet research. But if you want to talk to someone, it's always a good idea if you're going to talk to several people, which we encourage, to maybe start with maybe your first choice. Start at Stonehouse. That's a great solution. And we can sort of benchmark, lay out the fees as John described. And so you will know in your next interviews what to ask and how to compare. I hope that makes sense for you. And our door is always open anytime.